I'll never forget the day my neighborhood tried to take my garage away from me. Not my house, not my lawn, not even my mailbox me garage. That was the one space I could call my own, the one place where I kept my tools, my projects, and the memories of my grandfather. And when they told me I had to hand over a key like some obedient tenant in my own home, I knew right then the fight wasn't about safety, it was about control. My name's Mark Douglas. I'm a woodworker by trade, and by nature I like things to be square, plumb, true. When I finally saved enough to buy into Brookhaven Meadows, I thought I was buying peace-neat little lawns, quiet streets, nothing out of place. The house was plain gray, nothing fancy, but it had a 2-car garage. That was the selling point. A man needs a garage somewhere to fix, to think, to breathe. Inside mine, I had 2 treasures. The first was my grandfather's 1969 Harley Sportster in metallic blue, the bike he taught me to ride when I was a kid. The second was a safe I'd picked up at a storage auction taller than me, heavy as a fallen tree, and I hadn't opened it yet. It just sat there in the corner like a mystery waiting to be solved. For about a week, life was perfect. Then came the letter. The HOA president, a woman named Patricia Lang, called a mandatory meeting. Now Patricia wasn't just a busybody, she had that smile that says, "I know what's best for you, and you're going to thank me later." We all gathered in the stale clubhouse while she droned on about curb appeal and trash bins until finally she dropped her bombshell. From now on, she said, the HOA would require keys to every homeowner's garage and shed for emergency access. You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone shifted in their chairs, but no one wanted to raise their hand against her. So I did. "Yeah, I'm not giving you my key," I said flat, and the room went dead silent. Patricia cocked her head with that sugary smile. "It's a safety measure, Mark. What if there's a fire?" I told her, "The fire department's got axes. They'll be faster than you." A few folks coughed to hide a laugh. Her face flushed, and her so-called compliance officer, a weasel named Greg, puffed up his chest beside her. "It's for everyone's protection," he said. I looked right at him and said, "No thanks. I'll handle my own protection." That's when Patricia leaned in, her voice low and cold. "Refusal to comply will result in fines. And if you open that garage without our officer present, we'll treat it as hiding evidence and call the police." That was the moment I realized this wasn't about fire safety. This was about owning every inch of us. The next morning, I found a $50 fine taped to my garage with a handwritten note. "This is your only warning." I crushed it in my hand. Warnings don't mean much to a man who pays his own mortgage. So I grabbed my remote and opened my garage door wide. Sunlight hit my bike, and right across the street Patricia stood on her porch, phone to her ear, smirking like she was sending me straight to jail. I just waved back and rolled the Harley into the driveway. Sure enough, 20 minutes later a squad car pulled up. Out stepped Sergeant Hall, a seasoned cop with a face that said, "I've seen worse." Patricia marched over, dramatic as a soap opera. "Officer, he's violating community rules, hiding hazardous materials in his garage." Hall looked at me, then at the toolbox. "What materials?" he asked. Patricia stammered, We don't know. That's why we need access." He turned back to me. "This your house?" I showed him the deed. "That your bike?" Registration in hand. He studied the papers, handed them back, and shook his head. "Ma'am, this is a civil dispute, not a police matter. He owns the property. He can open his garage. And if you call 911 again for this, you're the one misusing emergency services." Her smugness collapsed into fury, but she couldn't argue with a badge. Hall nodded to me, "Have a good day, sir," and drove off. Patricia glared at me like she wished she could burn my house down with her eyes. I wiped grease off my hands and went back to tuning the carburetors, smiling. Round 1 went to me, but I knew it wasn't over. That night, I was jolted awake by the sound of metal grinding. I pulled up my cheap security feed on my phone, and my stomach dropped. 2 figures were in my garage. One was Greg. The other was a huge guy I didn't recognize, drilling into my safe. Sparks flying, metal screaming. I felt rage surge, but I remembered my grandfather's advice. Don't rush to a fight, Mark. Outsmart them. See, I'd made a little modification to my sprinkler system. The heads by the garage door had a separate valve, and I filled their line with blue chalk dust, the kind carpenters used to snap straight lines. Messy, harmless, impossible to wash off quick. I hit the switch. Seconds later, the 2 intruders stumbled out of the garage coughing, blasted head to toe in a bright blue cloud. Greg slipped on the wet porch and landed on his back like a cartoon villain. Neighbors' lights flipped on, and folks came to their windows. They all saw those two idiots covered in chalk dust, running down the street, leaving blue footprints behind. I had it all on video: breaking and entering, attempted theft, and the perfect punchline. The next morning, I called Sergeant Hall directly. He came over, watched the footage, and for the first time I saw a smile tug his lips. "That's burglary and fraud," he said. And Greg's face is clear as day. He explained the safe was now evidence, and to do it right we'd need a warrant. A locksmith came out, spun the dial, and with a satisfying clunk the safe opened. What we found wasn't just cash stacks of hundreds and fifties, but a ledger with names, dates, and payouts. Fake invoices from Greg's contracting company matched perfectly with funds missing from HOA accounts. Pool repairs that never happened, drainage jobs that weren't done, roofs left to rot. Patricia's signature was all over the approvals. Hall looked at me and said, "You just blew their scheme wide open." The next day, Patricia sent a tow truck with a forklift, claiming an HOA work order to remove my hazardous structure. That so-called structure was the very safe holding proof of her crimes. I wasn't about to let them steal it. I called my neighbor, Tom Alvarez, a retired contractor who kept a backhoe on his property. Within minutes, Tom drove that roaring beast across the street and parked it right in front of my garage, bucket down like a guard dog. The tow crew took one look at 10 tons of steel and backed right off. Patricia's furious voice screamed over the driver's speakerphone until Tom leaned on his horn, drowning her out. That was the first time in 20 years Tom got to tell her no. He savored every second. As if on cue, the skies opened up that evening. Rain hammered down, thunder rolled, and the streets turned into rivers. At the end of the block, the storm drain one the HOA was paid to fix months ago overflowed. Water swirled fast, and in the middle of it I spotted a boy and his dog, trapped and crying. Without thinking, I charged straight in, waded through chest-deep water, scooped up the terrified kid, and grabbed the retriever by the collar. We fought our way back to dry ground, where his mother collapsed in tears hugging him. And that's when I noticed Lisa Grant, one of Patricia's quieter board members, watching from her porch, clutching a folder of papers. She'd always been timid, voting the way Patricia told her, but that night something in her cracked. She came to my door, drenched, and handed me copies of 2 years' worth of invoices and meeting minutes. "I was afraid," she whispered. "She threatened my husband's business. But tonight I can't stay quiet." It was the missing puzzle piece. Together, Lisa, Tom, and I built a timeline: Patricia's fake emergency call, Hall's body cam showing her lies, the break-in footage with Greg painted blue, the ledger from the safe, and the invoices Lisa had saved. We went door to door with it all on a tablet, asking neighbors to sign a recall petition. Some were scared, but when they saw the evidence, especially Greg tripping like a clown in chalk, people signed. And when little Ryan's mom, the boy I pulled from the flood, showed up with a plate of cookies and said, "Where do I sign?" the tide turned. By the night of the HOA meeting, we had more than enough signatures. The community center was packed, people standing shoulder to shoulder. Patricia sat at the front table with Greg, still acting like queen of the cul-de-sac, smiling as if nothing could touch her. She gave me 3 minutes to speak, expecting me to crash and burn. I stepped to the podium, looked at my neighbors, and began. First, clicked the picture of me carrying Ryan out of the flood, water up to my chest. The room gasped. Second, clicked the audio of Patricia's shrill 911 call accusing me of threats. People stared at her, then at me, the calm man at the podium. Third, clicked Sergeant Hall's body cam of him telling her flat, "The rules don't override the law." Fourth, clicked the break-in video, and the room erupted in laughter when Greg slipped in blue dust. Fifth, clicked the ledger matched with invoices Lisa had saved, every dollar traced straight into their pockets. When I shut off the projector, the silence was thick. Patricia tried to shriek about lies, about community safety, but I walked up holding a single key in my hand. "You're right, Patricia," I said. "This is about keys. Tell you what, how about I trade you mine for yours?" The room exploded. Laughter, cheers, even a few stomps on the floor. That one line cut through every excuse she had. The vote wasn't even close. Greg Martin, for burglary and fraud. Handcuffs clicked, the room cheered, and for the first time since moving there, Brookhaven Meadows felt free. In the weeks after, Lisa took over as interim president and immediately killed the garage key mandate. She opened the books, launched a public audit, and neighbors started showing up not out of fear, but pride. Tom brought his crew and backhoe. Volunteers repaired the storm drain. And for the first time, we laughed together as a community instead of whispering behind blinds. As for me, I finally got back to my Harley. Tell me in the comments if your HOA tried to take control of your home. Would you fight back or play along to keep the peace? Do you think we were right to drag everything into the open? Or should we have left it to the courts quietly? I want to know where you stand, because sometimes the lines between safety, control, and freedom get real blurry in a neighborhood.